Russian soldiers' desperate attempt to fight off FPV drone with a stick seen in video. What may be the last, desperate minutes of a Russian soldier's life are captured in the latest video released by the Ukrainian Armed Forces Rubak Wild Division. It's a first-person view FPV drone unit of the 82nd Separate Airborne Assault Brigade that have made it their daily business to hunt tanks and other vehicles and, yes, sometimes chase down individual soldiers. The video serves as a stark reminder of the rapidly changing reality of drone warfare, which is becoming far more personal than it once was. The incident captured, backed by a stirring musical score, shows drone-on-man combat and a soldier's hapless effort to survive. The FPV drone is seen in the opening of the video approaching a Russian soldier standing near a cart. It swoops in ever closer and begins chasing him around it. A few seconds later, the video cuts to the view from another drone recording the deadly dance from afar. For the next 13 seconds, the video alternates between the drone camera views. At about the 24-second mark, the soldier, realizing he has no way to escape, picks up a stick in a last-ditch attempt to club his robotic attacker out of the sky. It's a desperate scene, to say the least. Several more quick cuts between the two drones ensue as the FPV drone furiously circles the soldier, who lunges in vain with the stick. It shows the soldier writhing around in obvious pain before lying motionless on the ground. It is unclear what happened to him, but at best, this was not a good day. In a video released earlier this month, one of the unit's FPV drones is seen targeting a Russian soldier in a trench. Unlike the one by the cart, this soldier is armed and attempts to shoot the drone down. Though there is a shower of sparks, apparently from a direct hit on the FPV, the defense attempt via small arms is ultimately unsuccessful. This video shows the unit going after a Russian tank near Verbov in Zaporizhia Oblast. The impact of FPV drones, which descend from racing drones in this war, cannot be overstated. They have provided highly maneuverable and hard to defend against precision strike capabilities in mass over short ranges. They have begun to eclipse the utility of traditional anti-tank weapons in some regards and even artillery in certain applications. Ukraine and Russia are building them feverishly in the thousands. As of late, Ukraine's dominance on the battlefield with these weapons is eroding as Russia spools up its own FPV drone production and strike teams. Regardless, unmanned warfare has rapidly evolved during this nearly 2-year-old all-out war, with drones now providing a much more up-close and personal threat to enemy troops nearly anywhere that can be accessed from the sky. On the other hand, in a cataclysm of artillery and drone strikes, Ukrainian forces smashed an attack by Russian troops in and around the town of Ulakli on or just before Sunday. Surveillance drones working for the Ukrainian Tavaz artillery group registered around 10 destroyed and abandoned Russian vehicles. The failed assault, one of several in the southeastern corner of Donetsk Oblast in eastern Ukraine in recent days, may have signaled the failure of the Russian offensive in the area. As recently as 2 weeks ago, the Russians had the momentum. They just ejected the Ukrainian Kortitsia Operational Strategic Group from Velika Novosilka, a few miles south of Ulakli, and were poised to pursue the retreating Ukrainians and potentially achieve a breakthrough in the area where Donetsk Oblast meets Zaporizhia Oblast. Now, a Russian breakthrough appears unlikely. Exhausted in fierce fighting over the past month, the enemy will not be able to quickly pursue the Kortitsia OSG, whose units are retreating from Velika Novosilka. Not only have the Russians suffered heavy losses in their modest advance along the Donetsk-Zaporizhia corner, they're also experiencing broader shortages of troops and equipment that have compelled them to prioritize their attacks. Desperate to eradicate the Ukrainian-held salient in western Russia's Kursk Oblast and equally eager to capture the fortress city of Pokrovsk, 18 miles north of Ulakli, the Russians are diverting resources from southern Donetsk. The enemy will not be able to break through to Zaporizhia or Dnipropetrovsk oblasts as they lack the necessary troops, funds, and resources, CDS assessed. In conclusion, the plan to collapse the southern Ukrainian front and advance toward Zaporizhia is unfeasible, the analysis group asserted. The exhaustion of the Russian offensive in southeastern Ukraine comes at a perilous time for the Kremlin.
But Russia isn't actually winning on the battlefield in Ukraine. Where its forces make gains, the advance is usually measured in yards, and might cost entire infantry companies with scores of troops. Yes, the Ukrainian military is struggling to mobilize sufficient forces, but the Russian military is struggling too, and it's the one that must advance hundreds of miles against a technologically advanced foe in order to achieve Moscow's original objectives, including regime change in Kyiv by force alone.
Выстрел! Выстрел!
The Russian military has objectively failed, analyst Andrew Perpetua pointed out, and they do not have the strength to ever recover from the degree to which they have failed. Russia cannot win this war on a battlefield, but it can win at the negotiating table if, for some reason, Ukraine caves to American pressure to end the war on terms favorable to Russia. Fortunately for Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky understands the political dynamics and has so far refused to surrender, publicly lavishing praise on Trump while also steadfastly refusing to sign the misspelled, exploitative minerals deal memo the White House forwarded to him. Zelensky has handled negotiations very well so far, according to Tatarigami, founder of the Ukrainian Frontelligence Insight Analysis Group. Ukrainian drone blows up North Korean Special Forces soldiers on foot in Kursk. North Korean troops are back in action in western Russia's Kursk Oblast, attacking on foot with fresh tactics and targeting Ukrainian vehicles with their unique Bullseye 4 mobile missile launchers. The military contingent of the Korean People's Army has returned to the operational zone, the Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies reported.
Where before, the North Koreans mostly attacked on foot in companies, 100 or 200 troops, they're now launching assaults in platoon groups of 50, according to CDS. The smaller assault groups may help the North Koreans avoid detection by Ukrainian drones, and could mitigate mass casualties in the event the Ukrainians do detect them. The Ukrainian 47th Mechanized Brigade has been lobbing cluster shells at Russian and North Korean assault groups in Kursk. Each shell scatters as many as 88 grenade-sized submunitions and can kill and maim infantry across a wide area. Cluster shells have defeated several North Korean attacks in Kursk, including one of the first in December. According to Army TV, the official channel of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, it's standard practice for Ukrainian units, including the 47th Mechanized Brigade, to fire a cluster shell at any large concentration of enemy troops, and to follow up the initial strike with an additional high explosive shell just to give them no chance. Alongside Ukraine's ever-present first-person view drones, the cluster munitions are among the main drivers of North Korean casualties. Pyongyang's 12,000-person 11th Army Corps reportedly lost a third of its troops killed or wounded before temporarily retreating in late January or early February. It's unclear whether Pyongyang sent additional infantry to make good the 11th Army Corps' losses. It is clear that the North Korean regime is supporting a significant arsenal of artillery and missile systems in western Russia and eastern Ukraine. A Ukrainian drone recently registered the first hit on a North Korean M1989 howitzer near Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine, and recent releases by Russian channels indicate North Korean Bullseye 4 missile vehicles are active in Kursk. The Ukrainians first spotted the 6-wheeled 8-missile Bullseye 4 near the front line back in August. They blew up their first Bullseye 4 4 months later. The surviving missile vehicles fired back, recently striking a possible Ukrainian fighting position as well as a Ukrainian armored vehicle. Any successful Bullseye 4 strikes would only slightly even the loss rate in Kursk. According to one open-source analyst, the Russians have lost around 550 vehicles in Kursk since the Ukrainians invaded in August. The Ukrainians have lost around 400. But don't expect the North Koreans to slow the pace of their attacks in Kursk as they rejoin the fighting, and as the politics of the wider war tilt against Ukraine. On the other hand, one Ukrainian brigade loses an entire company in a futile attack on a useless tree line. Combining their drones, mines, missiles, and artillery, the Ukrainian Army's 47th Mechanized Brigade and 92nd Assault Brigade not only resisted a Russian assault on their positions in western Russia's Kursk Oblast on Friday, they destroyed it, leaving a strip of the forest in the oblast littered with dead Russians. It was an important victory for the two elite brigades, but a victory that could come with surprising risks. According to one Ukrainian combat veteran who goes by Konstantin, there's a dangerous tendency among some Ukrainian commanders to assume units that are effective on the defense are equally ready to attack. So when a formation such as the 92nd Assault Brigade defends its lines from a Russian assault, some commanders might be tempted to order the unit to leave its fortifications, mass on open ground, and move toward Russian lines. But attacking is riskier than defending and tends to get more troops killed. The Ukrainian 95th Air Assault Brigade, deployed to Kursk alongside the 92nd Assault Brigade, rediscovered this truism the hard way in early January, when it rapidly shifted from defense to offense and advanced toward the village of Berdyn, just north of the main Ukrainian line. A clutch of Russia's best fiber-optic drones blasted the exposed Ukrainian paratroopers, inflicting heavy casualties and defeating the ill-advised attack. The same thing has happened to the 92nd Assault Brigade more than once. The part of the brigade that has been fighting in Kursk has had its staff replaced 3 times over the 3 years of Russia's wider war on Ukraine due to feudal orders to seize a tree line at the cost of an entire company's, Konstantin explained. A company normally has more than 100 troops. Left unsaid in Konstantin's criticism is an implied endorsement of the most obvious Ukrainian strategy as the wider war grinds into its 4th year. Dug-in Ukrainian brigades with intact supply lines and support from drones and artillery routinely inflict horrific casualties on Russian troops, at times killing or maiming hundreds in a single clash. The Russians have no choice but to attack, as the Kremlin's war aims are mostly offensive in nature, primarily to capture as much of eastern Ukraine as possible as fast as possible. The Ukrainians can lay their mines, pre-sight their artillery kill zones, and arm their drones, and confidently wait for the Russians to come rolling or marching across the shell-pocked no man's land. Experienced Ukrainian units are highly effective at repelling Russian attacks, Konstantin noted.